Claudette Archer was one of my earliest managers, and I've stayed in touch with her as a friend and mentor ever since. Through her firm Ankh Concepts, Claudette guides B2B companies in a variety of fields to grow faster and better through outstanding branding and marketing execution. I'm Abe Mesrich. This is Amazing Marketers, and I couldn't think of a more amazing marketer to kick off the series with than Claudette. Hello, Claudette, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you here. So let's just dive in. So this show is about what your marketers were amazing at about things and what they're amazing at. So before we get into what you're amazing at from a marketing perspective, tell me what you're amazing at from a non-marketing perspective.
I wouldn't say amazing necessarily. I'd say persistent.
Okay.
And as you mentioned before when we were putting this together, my threat to only ever do one full marathon, which kind of fell by the wayside because I've now done 4. But yeah, running is just one of those things that just became quite addictive. It's funny because this made me go and look at my race history. When I arrived to the US in 2006, I had 8 races under my belt, just like some 10Ks, a couple of halves. My current tally is 42.
Oh my gosh.
So
what's the range on that? It's like
10Ks, 10 milers, 15 miles, half marathons, and full marathons.
Damn. Wow. All right.
Yeah. So honestly, it just became addictive. Moving here from the UK, it was actually a really great way for me to build friendships, many of which are still lasting to this current date. And honestly, exercise has always been a way of life for me. As I mentioned, I had the desire to do 1 marathon just to see if I could. But then once you have that under your belt, you're like, well, maybe I can do another one a little bit faster. But I kind of went full circle. I joined Team in Training, which is part of the Leukemia Lymphoma Society fundraising arm.
Nice.
And through TNT, I then became a mentor to junior runners. I then got my coaching certification from the Road Runners Club of America.
And
awesome. Then I was coaching for several years. So unfortunately, LLS kind of fell by the wayside once COVID hit because we then weren't doing in-person trainings. But I guess running is just part of who I am now, and I just do it for fun. And I did the Brooklyn half a couple of months back just to keep my fingers or my toes in the water.
That's awesome. I do have a distinct memory of you training for your first marathon. Yeah. And I said, are you doing another one after this? You said, absolutely not. No way.
This famous last words.
And this is 3 marathons later. So very nice. Cool. So then on the marketing front, so you're a B2B marketing consultant, work with, seems like lately a lot of cybersecurity, a lot of different
risk management, financial crime.
So, so maybe just tell me a little bit about your background, sort of how you got to where you are, what you do.
Yeah, sure. So obviously arriving to the US, our first encounter was at Didit, search engine marketing agency. Prior to that, I had done quite a lot of B2B work, and that just continued once I arrived here, getting more into the SaaS space, consultancy. But clearly in the last few gigs, it's been more around the risk posture for enterprise financial service clients. So, tier 1, tier 2 banks, helping them maintain their compliance, making sure they are adhering to the regulations, and ultimately protecting their brand and ensuring that they don't get fined for dubious activities going on in their networks.
Right. Yeah. Imagine with generative AI, it gets even more fun from a risk perspective.
It's a challenge for marketers to figure out how to use it most effectively, I think.
Right. No, I was thinking more just from the perspective of the institutions themselves. that you have all sorts
Oh,
of new machines figuring out ways in, and it just
yeah,
makes the work from a marketer's perspective all the more important, because you have to
definitely.
make folks
Yeah.
feel safe that putting their money in the institution.
And also, when you think about from a regulatory standpoint, you don't want to be that bank who gets slapped with a ridiculously large fine, because all
Right,
that does is put your brand reputation down the pan.
right, right. Um, so zooming in, so what's the marketing skill that you feel like you're really, really super good at? And maybe just tell us what it is, how you got to that skill, and yeah, just tell us about it.
Yeah, sure. So I seem to have found my niche in the startup world. I personally, it's just more fulfilling for me. Smaller organizations, they're more nimble. You can change direction quite easily. But also, for me, just the fulfillment of being part of helping the organization to grow, that drives me, inspires me. So that said, from a startup perspective, I think the two most important things are branding and demand generation. So I have had to become a whiz at branding, because at the end of the day, my and marketing's job is to ensure that once the salesperson starts a conversation with the prospect, they're not wasting the first half of the presentation explaining who we are and what we do.
Right,
That's my role.
right. Do you feel like branding is a different game in in a startup versus an enterprise, or
Um,
it's a different, maybe not a different game, but just it's a different objective?
there's a heavier bias on it, I think, from a startup perspective, because so many startups, they have this amazing sexy product, and their core focus is building a sexy product, then trying to sell it, ramping up the sales effort. And often than not, unfortunately, marketing seems to be the last part of the jigsaw
Right.
puzzle, and marketing needs to be brought in sooner to make the salesperson's life easier, because it's a marketer's job to go out there and tell the story. This is our brand. This is what we do. This is why you need to be part of the conversation with us.
Marketers and sales folks are always sort of, there's that love hate relationship.
Loggerheads.
It's okay, or loggerheads. Do you have it like, so from a branding perspective? At what point in the conversation do you bring in the sales team? Is it sort of uh, there's a it's there's the brand is sort of fairly baked, and then you present to the sales. You bring the sales from day one. What's the
Um, a lot of the work can be done behind the scenes.
Mhm.
Sales' number one focus is to hopefully turn the leads that marketing have created into qualified opportunities. So once those become opportunities, their 9 to 5 is to drive those individuals through the sales cycle. When you're in the B2B enterprise space, a sales cycle could be anything from 6 to 9 months if you're lucky.
right,
Worst case scenario, it could be 12, 24, 36 quite easily.
right?
So it's this slow and steady engine that goes on in the background all the time, so that by the time it gets into the salesperson's hands, um, part of the hard work has already been done.
Mm.
So from my perspective, it's very much, a multi-pronged approach. Um, you're talking about media relations, you're talking about analyst engagement, you're talking about getting on the awards podium. It's all very aspirational. So when you look at it from, say, like, a B2B, one of the tier 1, tier 2 banks, the networks are very linked. Everyone knows everyone in the industry. If you've worked in the banking community for how many years, you probably have people at all of the major other
Right.
institutions. If they're then telling you, well, by the way, I'm using XYZ, that's an alarm bell in your head to say, hey, I know I've got an RFP coming up soon because we need to change one of our solutions. Let's go out to the vendors. If your network is telling you we're using this, you should probably check them out too. That's what you do, because it's already proven with one. So therefore, if it's proven with them and you're in the same industry space, it's going to work for you too. So, the combination of getting your thought leadership out there, getting placed on analyst reports, being regarded as, the subject matter expert with any media publications that focus on your area, that's where you want to be.
Right. So it's being on that list. It sounds like it's two things. It's being on that list when RFP time comes up, but it's also before that, it's getting the community to vouch for you ahead of that.
It's being part of the conversation. The joy for me is, especially when you have like charismatic SMEs, whether it's your sales engineering person, whether it's your head of product, whether it's your CEO, you want to be seen as a thought leader in your industry. You're driving the market. And even if you're not driving the market, you have an opinion on new things that are coming out, and people pay attention. And, you put out a blog and you want somebody to read it, but then it's probably left them with a few nuggets, which they'll say, you know what, let me go out and see if anyone else is talking about this, because these guys could be onto something. So it's about making sure you're at the forefront of where the market is going and positioning yourself as a vendor of choice.
Right. How do you find the right SME for the there's folks in, there's a specific person that you and I are both thinking about that we work with. It's sort of, like you're sort of like, this person is, loud and out there, and, it's obvious that this person should be out in public. But then, then there's people who are sort of more quiet and receding, but actually have really amazing thoughts. Like, how do you find the SME and say, I love, what's the formula? What's the algorithm for saying this person is the right person to speak about something, and I want to put this person on the pedestal, and then finding the right pedestal for that individual?
I always see that as kind of my 30, 60, 90 day fact-finding mission.
Okay.
Yeah. Interact with all of your function heads, so you have an in whenever an issue arises, but then also just through your initial welcome to the club, you see people, and just depending on what their role is in the organization, but also their contributions. Are they the ones who were brought in to help explain the solution when the salesperson is pitching? Are they the ones who, if there's some breaking story and we need to respond from an industry thought leadership perspective, can they embrace the journalist? Do the journalists like them? Some people are a real natural, both in front of a camera, on the speaking podium. It's just what they do well. And when you find that, you want to hone in on it and reel them out as many times as you can,
right.
Because it's kind of like, they talk and people just listen.
Right. And the journalists liking them, I think, is a big deal, because there's...
Yeah. Because the journalists need them to make the journalists look good.
Right. It's always making the next guy look good. So if you can...
Exactly.
Yeah.
But without coming across as we're the best in the industry.
Right.
It's more sharing our story in a matter of fact way.
Right. So so when you're coming in, just the 36 to 90 perspective, and it sounds like you're trying to figure out your role, but you're also trying to prep the team around you to be as supportive as they possibly can for making the brand look good.
Trying to identify the key assets.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So what are you looking for in that time period, and then what are you projecting? What are you projecting to the team in terms of? You don't necessarily you don't necessarily think about this thing when it comes to marketing, but you guys, if you find nugget A, come talk to me, because that's something I want to be sharing with the public.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the kind of like the three core things that that you want to instill, but more just from a marketing perspective, because unless you're in marketing, not everyone knows what it is we do. So certainly for me, it's ensuring that the marketing function has a voice at the table. So whether it's, just giving a presentation during an all hands, specifically during COVID, I think most of us were working remotely. We would have, if I look at, the last few gigs, we would maybe have like a weekly or a monthly all hands where you would go around the table and basically just sharing updates of what was happening in your function. So once that actually happens, then you have you're able to showcase, okay, these are some initiatives that I'm working on. And then you can start to plant the seed within the organization. So people will think, oh, I've heard about this award. Let me go and tell marketing because they may not be aware of it. Or they may say, oh, okay, there's this event going on with a speaking opportunity. Maybe we can get one of our SMEs on that platform. So once you start sharing the full range of marketing initiatives, the whole organization knows. So they can now start to be your eyes and ears because
awesome.
Clearly, marketing is usually a limited resource. You may have, a small team, but when you think of the eyeballs of your entire organization, they can bring things, but then it's marketing's job to do the due diligence to see, okay, yeah, this is going to be worth our time, or thank you, but no thank you.
So it's evangelizing your own program to everybody else, so that they can it creates buy-in, but also just it makes them your army to go and help you get everything
Exactly.
done.
And also, that's another thing. Branding isn't just the responsibility of the marketing team. Every time we step out in a business capacity, we are representing our organization.
Right.
That may be the first interaction anyone has had with our company.
Right.
And it needs to be positive. So everyone, whether it's the lady on reception, whether it's our CEO, whether it's, somebody from our product team, they may be going to an industry event, for like product people, and they're liaising with other people because one, they could be potential employees, or two, they could be potential customers.
Right. So how are you arming folks when they're going out? How are you making sure that everybody's speaking with the same brand voice and has the elevator pitch down? And
Well, the elevator pitch, I would say that is really more from a sales perspective,
okay.
because ultimately, if you're looking at like, maybe somebody who works in finance, or maybe somebody who works in customer success, customer success clearly have a different buy-in because these are the ones helping the installed client base. But then also they know all the nooks, the crannies, the ins and outs, why people bought the product. So for them, it's literally a walk in the park because this is what they do on a daily basis.
Right.
But for everyone else, it's just a case of, what is it your company does? Do you have that pitch down in a couple of lines? We're not expecting everyone to be salespeople,
Right.
because we're not all made that way.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if you're at an industry event and you're wearing your name badge that says Claudetter Archer, ABC company, people need to remember, oh my gosh, I remember hearing about ABC company when I met somebody. And that will plant the seed that they will hopefully go back to the office and start digging further to understand what it is we do. And then when the time is right, they may say, oh my gosh, I'm looking for a vendor for this. Let me go and see if Claudette's still available.
Right. So I'm circling back on something you said, that most people don't really understand what marketing does. What do you think, if you had to paint with really broad brushstrokes, what do you think people in orgs tend to think that, in their mind, what does marketing do?
Unfortunately, they probably think of us as like doing a lot of events and probably managing the website, because that's what they see most. But even, just looking at the website, look at the content. There's thought leadership there. There's white papers there. If you look at LinkedIn, that's basically a social media platform for businesses.
Right.
You have to be creating content for that. You need to be drafting posts to share the content that you're creating. From a website perspective, search engine optimization. Does our website naturally appear high in the Google rankings, or do we have to increase our Google AdWords budget to make sure that we're being seen for the right words? But there's all these little moving parts behind the scenes that somebody in finance may not be aware of.
Right. And I guess in defense of the person in finance, I'm sure I have sort of my picture of what finance does, and there's
Exactly
a long list of other things that I wouldn't even think to not think about.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how did you learn to do what you do?
When you're in that startup mode, which quite a few of my employees have been, you have to, and this comes out of the 30-60-90, you need to figure out, what am I inheriting? What do I need to create? What does the long-term solution look like? Branding specifically, it's the hare and the tortoise.
Okay.
Slow and steady wins the race. It's not an overnight fix. This is something that goes on in the background constantly. People probably don't see it, but this is what's happening. Something as simple as, say, for example, doing an award submission. That can take several people's involvement.
Right.
You usually then have to create stories in response to the questions being posed. That can take potentially a couple of weeks to put together, because you're going to your SMEs whose day job could be something else, but you need their input to create a nice, sexy response to the award submission to ensure that you get selected. So it's about creating these relationships at the start, so that when you need help with an award submission, or when you need somebody to do a speaking engagement at a trade conference, that you have buy-in from these people, because you've already broken it down to them. This is what I do from a marketing perspective. I will need to pull people in as and when required.
Right.
And when they see that, this is all about helping raise our profile in the industry, both to, one, potential clients, but two, keeping our existing customers sweet so that they can be references for us moving forward. They can potentially join us on the stage at an industry event, because your case is always stronger as a vendor when you have a client by the side of you, because the client is there to reinforce, I chose this company because this is what they delivered for me.
Right.
So basically just sharing the remit of what it is marketing can do and the individual's role that they can potentially play. Because this is more than just marketing people doing this.
Right.
It's sales engineers, it's the CMO, it could be our CTO, it could be our head of content. It's an organizational response.
Right. And I love that approach of creating buy-in by educating everybody and saying sort of this is actually a role the entire. Looping back to conversation, a point you made earlier. Marketing is a function that the whole organization has to do together, and sort of basically and using your first 90 days to make folks understand that you're on this trip with me whether you like it or not. And this is how you can be a help, and this is how you can help the company really.
Basically, yeah.
That's great. So who does it well? Who does marketing? Who does branding well?
I always use this example just because they make me feel special. Virgin Atlantic. I have been a Flying Club member for probably over 20 years. They send me emails and the email starts, "Hello, gorgeous." How can that not make you smile? And honestly, it's like the online experience is the same in person. from the girl, from the person at the check-in counter to actually getting on board, the service that you receive, the fact that I can just like kick off my shoes, scroll through a whole variety of movies, it keeps me occupied and happy and contented. The food is good. The staff are pleasant. I don't think I've ever really had a bad interaction with Virgin. And then also, just looking at Richard Branson's story, the guy was dyslexic, wasn't great at school,
Right.
yet was just a visionary and just a hard worker. To think that Virgin was the first airline that had the TV screens on the back of the chair.
Wait, they were the first?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yes. And we just take that for granted that,
Right.
oh my God, it's been there forever. No, it hasn't.
Right.
They were the first.
Right. They're elevating flying, which sucks, to a luxury
It's
experience
laborious.
for everybody.
Totally.
And, including you should have screens, you should have great food, you should have funny emails that make you smile. That's
Make the experience that, a 7.5 hour flight from London to New York goes just like that.
Right.
And they do it well.
Right. And what I'm also hearing from what you're saying is the consistency. It's every little thing. It's and this is just, I remember back in the day working with you, that's something, if Claudette cares about everything, it's Claudette cares about everything. It's, and it's, but that's because that's the point. It's the brand is every little detail has
every touch point.
Right.
Every touch point.
Right. Is there a BtoB company you feel like comes close, or a finance company?
Well, honestly, I mean, I've been with Chase Bank since I arrived here.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it's just been a very painless experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm constantly getting mail at home from other organizations. And as far as I'm concerned, if it ain't broke, it doesn't need fixing.
Right.
Chase have delivered for me. Their online app works pretty damn well. It allows me to control my money 24/7, 365. I don't have any problems with them. So
Nice.
Why go somewhere else?
Right. Right. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's so I'm just looking through my notes here, just making sure we haven't missed anything in the conversation. So tell me about sort of a personal case study where you feel like you went to an organization and you really just kicked ass.
I would probably say one of my most recent gigs, when I arrived, the company had been acquired about 2 or 3 years prior to that, and they had kind of taken the product, stripped it back, and refocused 100% on a specific vertical.
Mm-hmm.
So when I arrived, the product was there, it was proven, but marketing had been kind of just fallen by the wayside, and not a lot was going on. So basically I inherited a blank sheet of paper, but with existing KPIs.
Oh.
So
no pressure.
So, again, 2-pronged approach: branding, demand gen. The sales team was already in place. They were working on some opportunities that had been created prior to my arrival. And also bear in mind, this was during COVID. So, the conventional face-to-face in-person events where you can start to build some kind of relationship with prospects was non-existent at that time. So from my perspective, it was a case of how do we get our name, our reputation, our innovative nature out there. So relied heavily on a PR agency who had strong media connections. And then from an internal point of view from my side, it was identifying where can we get some award wins, who are the analysts we need to be briefing, what are the quadrants, the main reports that we should be featured in. So assembling all of that stuff in the back end. And then, you need to get the day-to-day stuff going. So building out things like a content calendar. Once we had that in place, brainstorming with our sales engineers or our product people, creating the content, but then building out a pipeline of social media posts. I mean, that's so easy to do now. You can literally build out like a month's worth in an afternoon and just leave it there, because then it's just being fired out as and when it's needed.
Right.
So wherever you can build it out and then let it run, that then gives you time to focus on the other things. Because say, for example, marketing would get pulled often into doing part of the response for an RFI or RFP.
Right.
A lot of these things are very timely.
Right.
So again, it's a slow and steady initiative. You're pulling in the relevant bits as needed. And it's not only just marketing's job to complete some of these initiatives. Sometimes you need to bring in the sales engineer. Sometimes I would need to bring in my head of product to do a briefing to an analyst because they want to get into the technical weeds. So it's identifying, it's facilitating, it's contributing, and making sure that the organization know these are the moving parts. Be on alert that if I ask you to do X, Y, Z for me, you make yourself available. Right. Everyone's doing their full-time job, but marketing is more than just the marketing function, because there are pockets of expertise across the organization. And if I need that expertise, I will try and give you as much notice as possible, but then sometimes accept, okay, this is a firestorm. We need to get this done really quickly.
Right. And that goes back to having that evangelism, having those relationships in place. And by the way, I love...
If Claudette comes knocking, please say yes.
Right. And I love the way I forget the specific question, but I love the way you tackle the whole program as, I forget the phrase you use, but there's a specific question you're trying to answer. How do we get this done? And then everything becomes sort of a subset of that question. I think that's a really
exactly. It's a multi-pronged approach. There's no one initiative that's going to yield everything that we need. So you kind of have to spread yourself out and cross your fingers and do the best you can.
Nice. Just a technical question. I thought I heard you say that you like to go do awards first and then go after analysts. Did I hear you right?
Awards, well, I would probably say awards only because they're time sensitive. So when an award is coming up, there's a deadline by which you need to have your responses in. So building that awards calendar at the early stage is your best friend, because you need to understand, when do I need to submit this document by? Because it's inflexible. If you don't get it in by the submission date, you're screwed and you have to wait another year.
Right.
You don't want to miss chances like that. So, you have a content calendar. Okay, what are we doing on a monthly basis? Where are we getting our content from? What topics are trending right now? Who do I need to pull in to do a brain dump to help produce that content?
Right.
Then when you look at, other than the awards, you've got quadrants. Gartner, for example. When do they start the review process from that? When do submissions need to be completed? When do presentations need to be done? None of these things are like, okay, we can turn it around in 24 hours, because there are usually a handful of people that are involved. So it's about scheduling. It's about processes, putting people on alert to say, hey, we've got 3 award wins coming up this month. I'm going to need your help with this. And also from a marketing perspective, sometimes you can just rewrite the content, because you don't want to be putting the same content out 1,000 times. And then also, you don't know who the judging committee is. So God forbid you're some industry expert who is then... Exactly. So you have to recreate the wheel. Exactly.
Yeah. That's interesting. So it's almost, what's the message we have to get out there? What are those moments we have to get the message delivered to? When
Who's
do they
going
have
to
to get it
help me
shipped
write the
by?
message?
And,
Yes.
and then who internally can help us do this?
Yep.
Nice, very nice. Cool, great. Do we want to talk about rebrands, or is that?
We can talk about
Okay.
rebrands.
What are your 5 tips for making sure that rebrands happen well, or 10 tips, or 3 tips, or give us tips.
Planning, planning, and planning.
Okay.
There are so many moving parts. If I look at my last gig, I undertook a rebrand whilst I was there. And I don't think you actually realize until you actually start digging how much work is needed. I mean, from a base level, you've got the logo changes. So, that's on every page on the website. Then you start looking at templates for a case study, for a white paper, for testimonials. What does that look like?
Right.
We also had some explainer videos on our website. All of them featured the old branding, the old logo, but then also the old company name. So we had to get some of those re-recorded as well.
Right.
What the logos on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on YouTube. Do we need to then also change the boilerplate? It's not until you actually sit down and go through, say, for example, the website with a fine-tooth comb, you realize, okay, this is the real scale of the project.
Right.
So the more time you have, the better.
Right.
You don't always have the luxury of time, unfortunately.
What's the fastest rebrand you ever did?
That one was probably about a 4-month project.
Okay.
But then bearing in mind, you still have the day-to-day stuff going on in the background.
Right. Because you're not a branding agency, you're a marketing team.
Exactly. But it's just one of those things that you just need to, as much advance notice as you can possibly have is better. So that you're not forgetting the day-to-day stuff, but you're working slowly and surely towards that goal.
Right.
And you know that when D-Day comes, touch wood, there are no errors.
Right.
That it is a smooth transition. You click that button and everything is switched over and everything works.
Right. And I'd imagine it's even harder. You're coming into these small organizations, or small and fast-growing organizations where, in an ideal world, everything is perfectly documented and everybody knows exactly where every single logo exists, and it doesn't exist in where you're playing. Awesome.
I say part of being a good marketer is about being an excellent relationship builder.
Right.
Because you're always going to need the support of somebody else within the organization.
Right.
So, don't come in and only embrace the marketing people, embrace the entire organization so that when you need to pull in favors, people have got your back.
That's really good. That's good. Great. Is there anything we've forgotten to talk about?
Did you let me have a quick look? I don't think so. There was one question you asked previously about, is there an upside or a downside trade-off to having this superpower?
Yeah.
I just made a few comments about that. My first reply was absolutely not.
No downside whatsoever.
Branding is an always-on component, 24/7, 365, whether you're physically doing something or not. Once you sign on that dotted line to become an employee of this company, you are a brand spokesperson, period.
Right.
Simple as that.
Right.
From my perspective, it's something where you can never take your foot off the gas or become complacent. Branding doesn't just do itself. You have to keep your finger on the pulse to ensure that you're seizing the opportunities as and when they present themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But then also by sharing the marketing philosophy in the organization, you then also have your colleagues bringing things to you for your review, because they may have seen something outside where they think, oh, that's something that could be of benefit to us. Let me throw it on Claudette's desk. I'm happy to take all of the input and then I'll do the weeding.
Right,
So
right,
again, having the support of colleagues is great. And the final thing I would probably say is it's about striving to maintain your competitive edge without being arrogant.
Okay.
It's just about being informative, matter of fact, showing your expertise, but leave it to others to shout how great you are. Leave it to the media. Leave it to your clients when they agree to do a case study for you. Leave it to the clients when they agree to present at an industry event with you. You don't have to tell the world how great you are. Your job is to inform so others can do that for you.
Uh-huh. So would you mean, and maybe I'm taking this too far, but are you saying, from let's say content marketing, right? So content marketing is, I'm just here to educate the market about the industry, and we're not telling you about, and then there's a separate lane, which is case studies. And case studies, we want the client to say, this is the best company on earth. But from a content marketing perspective, I'm just here to, I'm just here to share what I've learned.
Exactly. And add to that what you're seeing happening in the industry. Because also people want to know that, okay, you may have the right solution for today, but will you still be able to offer me that solution or the appropriate solution 3, 4, 5 years down the road?
Right.
They also need to see that you're evolving. You're not taking your foot off the gas.
Right.
You are building a solution that the market demands. What the market demands today, what they're going to demand 18, potentially 24 months from now could be a different solution. Right. So they need to know that you're a vendor that they can grow with. And when I say that specifically from an enterprise financial services perspective, when you look at a lot of the vendors they have in place, they've been there for a long time. They grow with the organization. Those are the kind of relationships you want to keep building.
Right.
It's not just a here and now. It's maybe 5, 7, 10 years down the line. Are they still meeting our needs?
Right. So you want the client to be comfortable that when it comes time for review time A, B, or C,
exactly.
It's a no-brainer. We're going to hire this company because they're seeing things 5 years ahead, and that we think they're telling us what's going to happen. We don't need to tell them.
Exactly. And we've already proven that we said X was going to happen in 3 years. It happened.
Right.
And that then gives you, the client, the advantage of knowing, okay, we need to start preparing for this. But hey, our strategic partner gave us the heads up, so we were ready when it happened.
Right. And I'd imagine...
Makes sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And I'd imagine when having those hooks into the company, those relationships into the company, from having the marketing team be, working in tandem with sales, who's your ears to the ground, and client services,
exactly,
and the SMEs, and everybody's telling you all this information, and then...
Yeah, because chances are the clients don't see marketing people.
Right.
As far as they're concerned, they may see their sales rep, they'll see their customer success person, they may speak with product if there's like a client advisory board or something. So marketing is behind the scenes.
Right.
So it's the people that they liaise with on a regular basis that is their partner.
To evangelize
But marketing can leverage that information. Yeah, exactly.
Right. That's great. That's awesome. Great, Claudette. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's really it's been great to to learn about. One thing, just for me, if a personal takeaway is thinking about leveraging those relationships in the org, and really and coming 100%. In literally from day one and saying, who do I what do I have to explain out, and what cooperation can I develop to make everybody sell their work better? I think it's really which is what marketing is all about.
Exactly. Marketing isn't just for the marketing team; it's for everyone in the company.
Nice. Thanks again to Claudette, and thanks so much to you for listening. Stay tuned for the next episode of Amazing Marketers. Want to connect in the meantime? Reach out through the contact info in the show notes. Bye for now.